The bottle shattered against the mahogany desk like a gunshot in the sterile quiet of the corner office. Shards of crystal exploding across family photos and merger contracts. "You're no son of mine," my father snarled. His face twisted into something unrecognizable. Veins bulging like the roots of the old oak tree he'd planted when I was born. Blood trickled from my split lip where his ring had caught me. But it was the venom in his eyes that burned deepest, eyes that saw not Isaac Harlan, heir to Harlan Enterprises, but a freak, a disappointment who dared to love a man. I stumbled back, the taste of copper flooding my mouth, the world tilting like the skyscrapers outside our midtown penthouse view. 28 years of grooming for this throne. And now it crumbled under the weight of one whispered truth. "Dad, I'm gay." The words I'd rehearsed in the mirror for months, hoping for understanding, for anything but this expulsion from the only empire I'd ever known. But empires don't bend for sons who break the mold, they devour them whole. As the elevator doors hissed shut behind me, sealing me off from the life I'd clawed for, I realized the real fracture wasn't in my lip or the boardroom, it was in the marrow of who I was. A crack that had been widening since the day I first felt eyes on me in the locker room showers. Not with envy, but with a hunger that mirrored my own. The rain hadn't let up since that morning in May, turning Manhattan into a watercolor smear of grays and silvers. The kind that makes you feel like you're drowning without ever touching the water. I nursed my lip in the dim glow of a dive bar off Times Square. The kind with sticky floors and jukebox tunes that promised escape but delivered only echoes. The bartender, a grizzled vet named Frankie with tattoos snaking up his arms like forgotten promises, slid me another whiskey without a word. He knew the type, corporate casualties washing up on his shore, suits rumpled, souls adrift. "You're Harlan's boy, ain't ya?" Frankie grunted, polishing a glass that had seen better days. I nodded, the motion pulling at the fresh scab. Harlan Enterprises, a behemoth of real estate and finance. Skyscrapers piercing the sky from Wall Street to Silicon Valley. Built on my grandfather's ruthlessness and my father's unyielding grip. I'd been forged in its shadow, summers interning at 16, Harvard MBA at 22. Climbing the ranks with a ferocity that masked the quiet terror of never being enough. Dad always said a real man builds legacies, not excuses. I'd believed him, until believing in myself meant confessing the lie I'd lived. The door swung open, letting in a gust of wet wind and a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne ad. If cologne ads starred brooding poets with ink-stained fingers. Alex. Good. Even now, his name tastes like regret wrapped in silk. He shook the rain from his dark curls, scanning the room with eyes the color of storm clouds over the Hudson. Our gazes locked, and something primal stirred, not lust, not yet, but recognition. Like spotting a fellow refugee in a sea of natives. He slid onto the stool next to me, ordering a gin and tonic with a voice that rolled like gravel under tires. "Rough night?" he asked, not prying, just offering the hook if I wanted to bite. I left. A bitter bark that hurt more than it healed. "Rough life." "You. Same shit. Different zip code." He extended a hand, calluses rough against my palm. "A writer," he later confessed, scraping by on freelance gigs for indie mags that paid in exposure and empty accolades. Alex Rivera, from the Bronx by way of Columbia's creative writing program, with a laugh that could disarm a bomb and a cynicism that mirrored my own polished facade. "We talked until last call. Words spilling like the whiskey, about the city's relentless grind. The way it chews up dreamers and spits out husks. He didn't flinch when I mentioned my father, the Harlan name that opened doors and crushed spines alike. Empires are just prisons with better views, he said, clinking his glass to mine. By the time we stumbled out into the downpour, arms brushing in the electric haze, I felt seen. Not as the heir, the golden boy, but as Isaac, flawed, alive. That night, we didn't go to my place, too risky, with Dad's security detail lurking like ghosts. Instead, we ended up at his cramped walk-up in the village. Books stacked like barricades against the world. Posters of Ginsberg and Baldwin peeling at the edges. The sex was tentative at first, hands exploring like cartographers charting forbidden territory, breaths mingling in the half-light of a single bulb. When he kissed the bruise on my jaw, whispering "You're enough," I shattered, not from pain, but from the mercy of it. Morning came with coffee strong enough to strip paint and a vulnerability that scared me shitless. Alex traced the Harlan crest tattooed on my shoulder, a family rite at 18, ink as binding as blood, and asked about it. I told him everything, the board meetings where I'd nod along to deals that displaced families in Brooklyn tenements, the galas where Dad paraded me like a prize stallion, the women he'd lined up for practice dates to keep up appearances. He wants me to be him, I said, staring at the steam curling from my mug. Straight, sharp, unbreakable. But I'm. This. Alex's hand found mine. Warm and steady. This is unbreakable. Isaac. Fuck his empire. Build your own. I wanted to believe him. Good. How I did. But belief is a luxury for men without legacies to uphold. By noon, I was back in Midtown, slinking into the executive suite like a thief in my own home. Dad's office loomed empty, off in Dubai sealing another acquisition, but the air hummed with his absence. Heavy as judgment. I patched my lip with concealer, straightened my tie, and dove into emails, pretending the fracture hadn't happened. Because in Harlan world, fractures are for the weak. Real men seal them with steel. Weeks blurred into a fever dream of duality. By day, I was the dutiful son, negotiating leases for luxury condos that'd price out the artists who'd once defined the village. Schmoozing investors at steakhouses where the steaks cost more than Alex's rent. Dad watched me like a hawk. His silences louder than lectures. But he never mentioned the fight. It festered between us. A gangrenous secret. Nights belonged to Alex. We'd meet in hidden corners, rooftop bars in Brooklyn where no one knew my face, or his apartment where we'd cook paella from recipes his abuela smuggled over from Puerto Rico. He'd read me drafts of his novel, a raw gut punch about a queer kid navigating the Bronx's concrete jungle. And I'd confess the parts of me Dad had beaten out, the boy who'd stolen glances at teammates during Pee-wee football, the teen who'd jerked off to visions of broad shoulders instead of prom queens. You're writing your truth, I'd say, head in his lap as rain pattered the fire escape. What's mine? He'd smile that crooked smile, fingers threading through my hair. This. The story where the prince doesn't need a castle, just a man who sees him. It was romantic bullshit. The kind that blooms in the cracks of a broken city. But it felt like salvation. Until the first crack in us appeared, subtle as a hairline fracture in marble. A missed call here, a vague late meeting there. I chalked it up to the grind, his deadlines, my empire, but doubt is a weed, and it roots deep. One evening, after a particularly brutal day closing a deal on a Harlem brownstone that'd gentrify another block into oblivion, I showed up at Alex's unannounced, takeout tie in hand. The door was ajar, murmurs spilling out like smoke. I pushed in, heart hammering, and froze. Not another man, no. That would have been cleaner. It was Dad's private investigator, a weasel-faced prick named Vargas, handing Alex an envelope thick with cash. Mr. Harlan's terms are clear, Vargas said, voice oily. Walk away, or the boy's career ends before it starts. Alex's face crumpled. But he took the money, fingers trembling. I didn't ask for this. He cornered me. I backed out before they saw me, the tie bag slipping from numb fingers, splattering curry across the hall runner. Betrayal tasted like betrayal always does, sharp, familiar, laced with the bile of self-loathing. Dad hadn't just disowned me, he'd weaponized my one fragile joy. The subway rattled like my pulse that night, each jolt a reminder of how deep the rot went. I didn't go home, couldn't face the mirrored lobby of my Upper East Side co-op, the doorman's pitying nod. Instead, I washed up in a Starbucks bathroom, splashing cold water on a face that looked like it had aged a decade, then texted Alex, we need to talk. My place. No accusations, no fury, just the hollow plea of a man clinging to the last thread of trust. He arrived an hour later, rain-slicked and hollow-eyed, the envelope's bulge faint in his jacket pocket. We stood in my living room, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the glittering lie of the skyline, the space between us vast as the chasm Dad had carved. Isaac, listen, he started, but I cut him off, voice steady as rebar. Show me, he hesitated, then pulled out the cash, $5,000 in crisp hundreds, enough to float him for months. Vargas's card fluttered out with it, embossed with Harlan's seal. The terms were typed on Harlan letterhead, cease all contact with Isaac Harlan Jr. Effective immediately. Non-compliance will result in blacklisting from publishing houses, freelance outlets, and any network affiliated with Harlan Enterprises. Consider this your severance from delusion. Delusion. That's what Dad called love when it didn't fit his blueprint. Alex sank onto the leather sectional, head in hands. He found out about us. Tracked my IP from that article I pitched, some queer lit festival thing. Said he'd bury me if I didn't take it. And you did. The words hung, accusatory despite my calm. I was a storm, winds howling with the boy's grief from that office brawl. Lightning cracking against the man's resolve to hold it together. Alex looked up, eyes red-rimmed. What was I supposed to do? Fight your father's machine with my byline? I'm not you, Isaac. I don't have trust funds or corner offices. This novel's my shot. The only thing keeping me from crawling back to the Bronx with my tail between my legs. I paced, the carpet muffling my steps but not the roar in my ears. Part of me wanted to rage, to hurl the money out the window and watch it snow over Park Avenue. But another part, the part Dad had beaten into me, understood. Survival in this city isn't noble, it's calculus. Empires don't fall to passion, they grind it underfoot. Say something, Alex whispered, standing, reaching for me. His touch ignited the fuse, anger, despair colliding in a blaze. We crashed together. Kisses bruising. Hands clawing at clothes like they held the answers. It was frantic, punishing sex on the rug. Bodies slamming in rhythm to unspoken accusations. When we came, it was with gasps that bordered on sobs. His name a curse and a prayer on my lips. Tangled in sheets that smelled of us. He confessed the rest. Dad hadn't just threatened, he'd dangled carrots too, introductions to agents. A quiet investment in his book if he played nice. I told him no, Alex murmured, tracing the tattoo on my chest. But the money. It was from Ma's meds. Cancer's back. And insurance is a joke. Guilt twisted like a knife. I'd been so wrapped in my own war. I hadn't asked about his silences. The late nights hunched over his laptop. But the envelope lay between us. A tainted bridge. Keep it, I said finally. Voice rough. For her. But us. We can't pretend this didn't happen. He nodded. Tears carving tracks down his cheeks. I love you, Isaac. That wasn't a lie. The word landed like a grenade in Harlan territory. Where emotions were liabilities, affection a weakness to exploit. I pulled him close, inhaling the salt of his skin, the faint spice of his cologne. I know. But love doesn't pay the reaper. We tried. After that. Stolen hours in neutral zones, cafes in Queens where Spanish chatter drowned our whispers. Drives upstate to cabins that rented by the night. Alex poured his rage into his manuscript. Pages bleeding with characters who echoed us, a closeted exec and a starving artist. Their passion a Molotov against the machine. I'd read drafts in bed, his head on my thigh, and feel a spark of something defiant. Maybe this was my story, not boardrooms, but this quiet rebellion. But Dad's shadow lengthened. Whispers in meetings, Isaac's distracted. Glances from VPs who'd known him since diapers. Pity masked as concern. Then the calls started, anonymous tips from concerned colleagues about my lifestyle choices jeopardizing deals. Dad summoned me to the penthouse. The same office where the bottle had shattered. But this time with bourbon decanted. Not hurled. Sit, he commanded, gesturing to the leather wingback that had cradled every major decision of my life. He looked older in the lamplight, crow's feet deepening around eyes that had once sparkled with pride. We've got a problem. I perched on the edge. Spine rigid. If it's about the Kensington merger, it's about you. He slid a dossier across the desk, photos of Alex and me. Grainy shots from a park bench in Central Park. His hand on my knee. My stomach plummeted. This. Indiscretion. It's a liability. Clients talk. Investors bolt. Indiscretion. As if love were a footnote, a smear on the ledger. It's not an indiscretion. It's who I am. He leaned forward, voice dropping to that paternal timbre he'd used to close billion-dollar deals. Son, identity is what you make it. Harlan men build. They don't. Fraternize. The word dripped disdain, conjuring images of locker room bravado. The straight arrow legacy I'd failed to inherit. End it. Cleanly. Or I'll end it for you. The air thickened, charged with the unsaid, the disownment hanging like a guillotine. I thought of Alex's ma. The chemo bills stacking like accusations, of my own reflection in the elevator that night. bloodied and broken. And if I don't? His laugh was hollow, a bark without mirth. Then you're no Harlan. No empire. No name. I left without another word. The dossier clutched like a talisman or a noose. Back in my apartment, Alex waited, fresh pages in hand. We made love slowly that night, mapping each scar, each sigh, as if committing it to memory. Whatever comes, he murmured against my neck. We face it together, but togetherness is a fragile alloy. And Dad's forge was unrelenting. 2 days later, Alex called, voice cracking over the line. They pulled my pitch. The editor said it was too niche, but I know Harlan strings everywhere. Rage boiled, hot and clarifying. I stormed Dad's office at dawn, the building a ghost town before the traders stirred. He was there, nursing black coffee, surprise flickering before stealing over. Isaac, you're poison, I spat, slamming the dossier down. Not just to me, to everyone I touch. Alex's book. His mother's care. You think buying silence makes you strong? It makes you a tyrant. He wrote, towering despite the paunch of 60 hard years. I protect what's mine. This company, this family, it's bigger than your whims. Whims. The word ignited me. I grabbed the family photo from his desk, the one of us at the Hamptons, me gap-toothed and grinning on his shoulders, and hurled it. Glass spiderwebbed, our smiles fracturing. You raised me to conquer the... I'm conquering this lie. I'm gay. And I'm staying that way, with him, without him. Empire or not. Silence stretched, taut as a wire. Then, softly, you're throwing away everything I built for you. No, I whispered. Throat tight. I'm building something real. I walked out as the sun crested the East River, gold gilding the spires of our domain. Freedom tasted like ash. But for the first time, it was mine. Alex met me at a diner in Hell's Kitchen, pancakes steaming between us like a peace offering. What now? He asked, syrup dripping from his fork. Now, I said, lacing our fingers under the table. We write the ending, but endings, in this city of sharp edges, rarely come gentle. Summer scorched Manhattan into a pressure cooker, humidity pressing down like Dad's expectations, turning every breath into a negotiation. Alex and I hunkered in his village walk-up, windows cracked to the symphony of horns and hawkers, pretending the world outside wasn't closing in. His novel surged forward, fueled by our standoff, a queer odyssey titled Empire of Echoes, where the lovers toppled tycoons not with fists, but with truths carved in ink. I'd sneak reads between conference calls, his words a balm on the bruise of Dad's silence. No more summons, no olive branches, just the cold shoulder of disinheritance, bored whispers hinting at my instability. It should have broken me, that excision from the Harlan vein. Instead, it freed something feral. I started volunteering at a queer youth center in Chelsea, facilitating workshops on coming out, my suit traded for jeans and a faded Ramones tee. The kids, 17, eyes wide with the terror I knew too well, hung on my stories. Not the sanitized exec version, but the raw one, the bottle smash, the blood, the boy who'd hidden crushes behind touchdowns. Your dad's wrong, one kid, Timmy, said after a session, his voice fierce despite the fresh bruises from his own home front. Real men love who they love. I hugged him. The embrace fierce. And for a moment, I glimpsed the man Dad could never see, not a successor, but the survivor. Alex saw it too. That night over rooftop wine. The city sprawling like a conquered beast below. "You're glowing," he said, nuzzling my collarbone. "Like you've shed a skin." Sex followed. Lazy and languid under the stars. His body a map I'd memorized but never tired of exploring. Afterward, sweat slick and sated, he dropped the bomb. "Got an offer. Lit agent in LA, wants to shop the book. Big push. Maybe a 6-figure advance if it lands." Joy sparked. Then guttered. "Well, that's far." His fingers stilled on my hip. "It's a chance, Isaac. To build something without your dad's boot on my neck." The old fracture ached. We'd patched it with promises, but distance was the ultimate stress test. "And us, Beth." Voice small. "We make it work." Vince, face down. The whole rom-com shtick. But his eyes held the shadow of doubt. And I wondered if the envelope's ghost still lingered, had the money bought not just silence, but an exit strategy? I nodded, swallowing the lump. "Go. Be the writer who burns it all down." He left 2 weeks later, subletting his place to a painter friend, the apartment echoing with his absence. Calls came sporadic at first, excitement bubbling about pitch meetings, sunsets over the Pacific that made Manhattan's grit feel quaint. I threw myself into work. Ironically, Dad's freeze-out meant I was persona non grata in the C-suite, so I buried in mid-level ops, streamlining portfolios that had once bored me senseless. It was rebellion by mundanity, a fuck you to the empire by thriving in its guts. Then the betrayal hit, not with a crash, but a whisper. A late-night scroll through Twitter, old habit from Alex's social media evangelism, landed on a grainy photo, him at a WeHo bar. Arms slung around a chiseled screenwriter type. Captions winking about new muses. My chest caved, breath seizing like I'd run the length of the Brooklyn Bridge. "It's nothing," I told myself. Dialing. Voicemail. Text, saw the pic. "Who's the guy that's danced?" Then, "Just networking." "Miss you." Networking. The word soured, echoing Dad's indiscretions. Paranoia bloomed. Old Harlan instincts kicking in, pulling strings at PI firms Dad had blacklisted me from. Reports trickled, dinners at Chateau Marmont. Collaborations that stretched into dawns. Alex's byline popping in trades with the screenwriter's name attached. The call came on a Tuesday, rain lashing my windows like judgment. "Isaac," he said, voice thick with static or guilt. "We need to talk." About the networking? Bitterness laced my tone, sharper than intended. Silence. Then, "It's not what you think." "But LA's different. Faster." "I'm not saying we end it, but maybe." Pause. 'Cause like love was a playlist, skippable on a whim. The dam broke, words tumbling, accusations flying. "You took his money, Alex." Pretended to fight, then ran at the first shiny deal. Was I just the plot device? The tragic gay heir to make your book authentic? No. Desperation cracked his voice. It was real. You were real. But this city's eating me alive. Your dad? The pressure. I can't breathe. My dad. Always the scapegoat, the villain in our narrative. Then breathe without me, I said, hanging up before the sob escaped. The phone clattered to the floor. Screen cracking like that office photo months ago. Grief hollowed me out. Days blurring into nights of whiskey and what-ifs. Jamie noticed at the center, cornering me after group. You look like shit. Spill. The story pouring like confession, the hookup in the bar. The passion. The Empire's sabotage. Now this gutting finale. He listened. No judgment. Then, betrayal's a bitch. But it's not the end. It's the forge. Forge. Dad's word. Twisted into wisdom. I nodded. But the seed took root. While Alex's book deal ink dried, Empire of Echoes, hailed as the great queer American novel, with my ghost haunting every page, I rebuilt. Quietly. Applied for internal transfers. Leveraging ops savvy into a sustainability arm Dad had greenlit as PR fluff. Green buildings. Affordable housing pilots, ironic. Weaponizing the empire against its own greed. Dad summoned me then. 6 months into the silence. The penthouse reeking of cigar smoke and scotch. He looked on. Ty askew. The merger tightened frayed at edges. Heard about your pet projects, he grunted. Pouring 2 glasses. Woke nonsense. But numbers don't lie, ROI's up 12%. Except. Wary. It's not woke. It's right. He had me. Probing. And the boy? Rivera. His book's climbing charts. Subtle. Isn't it? Subtle. My life. Fictionalized for profit. Rage flickered. But exhaustion doused it. We ended. Happy. His laugh was wry. Almost fond. Happiness is for fools. Son. Legacy's what endures. Legacy. The word chained me, pulling me back to the boy he'd shattered. Your legacy or mine? The gauntlet thrown. We circled, arguments laced with barbs. Urban loosening tongues. He confessed fragments, his own father's belt for a soft youth. The marriages of convenience that birthed me but hollowed mom before cancer claimed her. I did it for you, he said. Voice cracking for the first time. To make you steel. And if steel bends? I pressed. Heart pounding. Then it was never steel. The truce was uneasy. A ceasefire, not peace. I stayed in the company, carving my niche. But the fracture lingered. Alex's book tour buzzed, LA premieres. My pain commodified. A package arrived, signed copy. Inscription, for Isaac, the echo that started it all. Forgive? I burned it in the sink. Flames licking pages like absolution denied. Forgiveness was a luxury, survival. A necessity. But empires shift on whispers. And Dad's health faltered, prostate scare. Hushed from the press. Boardroom vultures circled. Loyalists peeling away. He called me to his bedside in the Hamptons estate. The oak tree outside skeletal in autumn chill. Isaac, he rasped. Hand trembling on mine. If I go, it's yours. But only if you want it. The weight crushed. Love and loathing entwined. I want it, I whispered. But on my terms. His nod was feeble. Eyes closing. Real men adapt. As winter gripped the city, I stepped into the void, not as heir, but architect. Alex faded to footnote. His pause a permanent ellipsis. The center thrived. Jamie blooming into advocate. And in the mirror, I saw not Dad's ghost, but Isaac, bent, but unbroken. Winter in New York is a brutal editor, slashing excess until only bones remain, truths stripped bare, survivors etched in frost. Dad's decline accelerated post-diagnosis, the chemo cocktail turning the Titan into a specter, his office visits reduced to raspy voicemails barking directives from a hospital bed. I shouldered the load, navigating shareholder calls with a poise I'd forged in secrecy, all while the board eyed me like fresh meat. Harlan blood runs true, one old guard VP murmured after a tense Q4 review. But his grip on my shoulder felt like a leash, not loyalty. Alex's shadow lingered, a bruise that throbbed in quiet moments. His book hit bestseller lists. Empire of Echoes dissected in The Atlantic as a searing indictment of patriarchal toxicity, my unnamed role fueling think pieces on queer erasure in family dynasties. I caught him on a Fresh Air podcast. Voice smooth as aged whiskey, the stories about reclaiming narrative from those who wield it as weapon. In all its mess, is the ultimate disruption. Disruption. If only he'd disrupted his own exit. I blocked the promo spam, but Jamie, now interning at the center, his bruises faded to faint stars, slipped me a ticket stub from Alex's Brooklyn reading. Go, he urged, eyes gleaming. Closure's a gift you give yourself. I went incognito in a beanie and leather jacket, the bookstore packed with hipsters and activists, air thick with soy lattes and idealism. Alex commanded the stage. Curl-stained, suit-tailored, LA polish gilding the Bronx grit. His eyes swept the crowd, snagging on mine mid-sentence. Falter. Then recovery, and in the end, the heir doesn't topple the throne, he redefines it. Applause thundered, I slipped out, pulse erratic, into the biting December wind. His text buzzed immediate, back row. Coffee? For old times. The diner around the corner was a time capsule, for mica counters, pie under glass, the waitress calling me Han, like she had that first night. Alex slid in opposite, older somehow, lines etching his laugh. You look good, he said, stirring sugar into black coffee. Power suits you. Bullshit, I replied, but without heat. You look like a sellout. 6 figures and suddenly it's disruption instead of desperation. He winced. Deservedly. Fair. The advanced Botmas treatments, she's in remission now. But the rest? It was escape. From your dad. From the fear I'd drag you down. You did that fine yourself. The words landed flat. Exhaustion muting the edge. We talked then? Really talked, not accusations, but archaeology, unearthing the boy I'd been, the writer he'd aspired to, the love we'd fumbled like a shared secret too heavy to hold. I'm sorry, he said finally, hand hovering near mine. For the pause. For making you the echo instead of the voice. I let him take my fingers. The touch electric. Familiar ache blooming. Echoes build walls. Alex. But I broke through. We didn't reignite, not then. But the night cracked open something, forgiveness. Not as erasure, but as scar tissue. Stronger for the mend. He stayed in town a week. Crashing at my place platonically. Nights debating canon over takeout. days shadowing me at the center. Jamie adored him, the two trading barbs like brothers, and in those glimpses, Alex reading to wide-eyed teens. His vulnerability a bridge, I saw the man I'd fallen for, unpolished by distance. Dad died in January, snow blanketing the estate like a shroud. The funeral was a circus, suits and sobs, eulogies lauding the visionary who'd raised blocks for progress. I stood at the podium, Harlan crest pinned to my lapel, voice steady. He built an empire on conviction. Unyielding. But legacies aren't monuments, they're choices. I'll honor his by choosing differently, sustainability over sprawl, community over conquest. Murmurs rippled, the board shifted uneasily. But as the casket lowered, under that old oak, I felt his ghost nod, grudging, but real. The will named me sole heir. With clauses, dissolve the PI division. Seed 20% profits into affordable housing. His final fuck you? Or olive branch? I'd never know. In the aftermath, the empire bore my name, not in title, but transformation. Harlan Enterprises rebranded subtly, green initiatives headlined annual reports. Youth programs sponsored under the Isaac Harlan Foundation. Vultures scattered, loyalists coalesced around my vision. Alex extended his stay, pitching a sequel, Our Story, unhosted, with queer joy at its core. Cora, he asked one dawn, tangled in sheets after the dam finally broke. Our reunion a slow burn of rediscovered hunger. I considered, tracing the silver chain Mom's initials glinting on his chest, he'd kept it. A talisman from that first night. Only if it's honest. No pauses. Promise. His kiss sealed it. Deep and anchoring. Spring thawed the city. Cherry blossoms defiant against concrete. Jamie graduated high school. Valedictorian speech quoting Alex's book. Crediting the center for his voice. At the ceremony, Alex's arm around my waist. I felt the pieces slot. The boy Dad broke. The man I'd built. The love we'd reclaimed. Empires fall. But stories endure. It's etched in skyscrapers softened by solar panels. In pages that pulse with heartbeats like mine. Unapologetic. Human. Dad was wrong. I wasn't a real man by his measure. But by mine, I'm the king. And in this vast, bruised American dream, that's legacy enough.